So, hello everyone, welcome. Lovely to be here with you all again and with the wonderful Grant Shepherd based in New Zealand. Hello, Grant.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, same here.
And just before we started the recording, we were chatting about how it's Pride Month. And
Mm,
Grant was commenting, would you maybe like to repeat what you just said? Because I thought that was really lovely about uh, Pride Month, someone wishing you a
Oh,
happy Pride Month.
yeah. So a lovely lady a while ago, she wished me a happy Pride Month, and I said to her, "Thank you very much. I actually have a Pride life." I said, "So it's wonderful." I said, "I get Pride Month and a Pride life all at the same time." And then we both have had a bit of a giggle about that.
Yes, yes. So then that is a lovely question, isn't it? It's like, and I do remember once being on a Pride here in London and
Mm,
going into Trafalgar Square where they have the central stage and all of the speakers, and someone was saying there, well, yes, it's wonderful that we have Pride, and it's wonderful we have this day where we can celebrate ourselves and feel free to come out into the streets and be seen, um,
mm,
and then they said, but how would it be to live every day as if it were Pride?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Rather than just pigeonholing ourselves into one month. What
Yes,
would it look like to live freedom throughout the whole year?
yes,
Mm. To live in our freedom to express ourselves as we are.
yes. And
Mm.
for me and my explorations into Tantra has certainly felt an element of that embracing living every day as if it were Pride, because for me, Tantra is about connecting to that life force, that sense of vitality,
Mm.
bliss, and then how does it manifest in our daily interactions with others, uh, and our internal practice, how we experience the world. So today, we thought we would explore this intersection between what Tantra practices, our experience of Tantra, and then what it means to be a gay, bi, trans, queer man uh, living with this sense of pride.
Mm. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that pride is actually one of the seven deadly sins.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And in Hinduism as well, Mada is the name of it. Mada is pride, but it's also connected to that sense of being different from others. There's that certain sense of that, and I think in our society, it's important to not only maintain a certain awareness of the differences we might have, but also the similarities we have too, because
mm,
that can help to reduce division, reduce all the problems that we're having,
mm,
particularly, things like social media. And it really can divide us rather than us all going, oh, hold on a minute. Yes, we are kind of like an amazing rainbow. Um,
mm.
and at the same time, we share our common humanity wherever
Yes.
we are. I remember someone once said to me in India, they said something along the lines of differences because I was a Westerner there in India. And I said to him, well, cut me and cut you, and we both bleed the same.
Yes.
And I was
Yes.
like, oh, yeah.
Yes, and likewise, and I remember reading something where it's saying, skin color is literally only skin deep. It's
Yeah.
like it's a
Yeah.
little tiny surface layer. Um, uh, Historically, a video I was watching was talking about how it was like one little change in the chromosome meant that people who were in climates with less sun, their skin adapted and
Yeah.
became a little more pale. Um,
Mm.
but that's one of the things I think, Tantra points towards, isn't it? There's that, we are simply all spiritual beings appearing in the human realm, and we all share the same potential of Buddha nature, of awakening to bliss. Um, I mean, after all, the teaching I follow, which is from the Buddha, that was what would someone who would now be considered a person of color, a non-Caucasian, non-European, and yet what he discovered was something that is universal. It's not just applicable within the Indian subcontinent. It's something that people can practice throughout the world.
Mm. Absolutely. Like timeless wisdom. Yep.
Mm,
Wisdom, all the wisdom traditions have that. So Buddhism has it, Hinduism has it. Of course, yoga and Tantra being specific schools in the Indian subcontinent, they have it. There's a different there's a different approach though, often when it comes to Tantra. Tantra is really world affirming. It's like, okay, this world is actually it's consciousness. It's an expanse of our own awareness, our own
yeah.
consciousness. So as a result of that, there's nothing really that we need to run away from in order to understand ourselves.
Mm,
That doesn't mean that things don't come without consequences, right? So if we
mm,
do something that's not so great, okay, well, go ahead, do it, but you are going to have to deal with the consequences later on. Conversely, same thing if you do something wonderful, down the line, it'll come back.
mm.
Karma, that that particular doctrine, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Yes. Yes, and what you say actually reminds me a little bit of the second Matrix in the Matrix trilogy, in that there's a very tantric, life affirming vibe in the second Matrix, um,
Mm,
because the second Matrix is all about the humanness of the human world, people dancing, celebrating,
mm,
uh, having this ecstatic experience, and when we're on Pride, and however we might express that, whether it's that we're on a Pride march, or whether we're going out dancing, or we're just quietly celebrating who we are, there's that tantric aspect of it. It's like you could say that as you were sort of dancing through the Pride march, um, Tantra gives you that permission in a way to say, yes, this is my way of expressing my bliss, rather
mm,
than maybe the earlier forms of Buddhism, which are focused more on restraint and cutting away of
yeah,
things which are a distraction.
yeah.
Um, Tantra is very much, and I know Vajra, the Italian Tantra teacher, I have conversations with. He's made the same point, and he's coming from a Tibetan Tantra perspective, but it's the same point that Tantra affirms life. It's like we don't step away from life. We don't um, cut off into a life of asceticism. And so my path, in a way, has included that, because my first years from 20 to 35 were all about monastic life, asceticism, one meal a day, or not eating after midday, um, and sexual restraint, celibacy.
Mm,
So there was a sense that all of these things had to be stepped away from in order to somehow try to awaken, uh,
mm,
and then leaving the monastery and meeting you and Vajra and coming across different Tantra teachings, then that's opened up a very different approach, which is that, well, the issue is when we attach and when we and when our attachment leads to us acting unskillfully, because as you say, there will be consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're just in the flow of something and enjoying the life force moving through us, you can be in union with a lover and feeling that mutual prana and energy just moving through your bodies and enjoying the intimacy of that moment of just being with another living being, expressing their bliss. And then there's just something very beautiful about that. And in the workshops that I do, where you have a group of 14 men working together, massaging, an intimate massage where it's including the genitals, but then it's also, what I've noticed is it's always about slowing down. And so Tantra is both about saying, yes, fully celebrate this. And it's also like, and also just notice what it's like to slow it down so you really become present to the pleasure that's arising in your body, the warmth, the vibration, the feeling of aliveness, that flame of Shakti rising up through the central channel. So you start to both be in your body, but also recognize I'm not just my body.
Well, that slowing down facilitates that, yes, because we're so caught in our thoughts usually, or our actions, or doing what we're doing in life right now. The pace of life is pretty frantic, really. And then, for example, I decided to give myself a break from social media for a few days, and no more doom scroll for a while. Free myself up to do other things, right? I noticed virtually immediately that my mind was a lot more settled and it was less fragmented, because when we're looking at different images or seeing different emotive things, or there's a lot of fragmentation that happens as a result of scrolling all the time, our mind can become really agitated and disturbed. So what Tantra does is that it does allow us to slow down. It gives us the tools to do that. So, for example, it might be breath, or it might be being aware of our posture, or it might be coming into the present moment. Oh, I loved what you were saying about acknowledging the Shakti, acknowledging that energy. In Hinduism, without Shakti, there is no Tantra. Tantra is about the energy, it is about the Shakti. If there was no Shakti, if there was no energy, then there would be no Tantra. I'm talking traditional Tantra. Right? The particular school that I love and that I've been aligned with for many years is Kashmir Shaivism. I'd love to read you a description of it. It says here, Kashmir Shaivism represents radical inclusivity, bringing the timeless wisdom of meditation to anyone who wishes to learn it. Kashmir Shaivism is a highly inclusive tradition, open to people of all nationalities, backgrounds, genders, and orientations, as it teaches that authentically knowing yourself is everyone's birthright. Now, when I heard that description, it really resonated with me, because coming from a church background, where the church that I was involved with was actively discriminating against gay people, I thought to myself, how does that work? And also seeing a few priests that were looking very, members of the family, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, well, what's happening? What's happening here?
Yes, friends of
What's
Dorothy
the
in the
double
closet.
standard? That's right. Yeah, yeah. And in the closet of the robes, so to speak. So I always found that quite disconnecting. But then when I read, that and discovered the meaning of Kashmir Shaivism, I thought, oh, hold on a minute. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yes.
that radical inclusivity.
So in terms of your own sexuality and enjoyment of your sexuality and body and connections with others, um, what aspects of Tantra have then really aligned with this sort of principle of Pride Month, which is like saying, I celebrate myself. It sounds as if you're already in a way touching on that because it's the Shakti and being introduced to the Shakti. You then
Mm.
realize there is something in me that I can be I can celebrate. I mean, pride, I think the way we're using it in the queer world and for the Pride Month, it's really about celebrating, isn't it? It's like it's when we say we have pride in something, it's not the pride of arrogance, which is the deadly sin pride.
Mm.
Being arrogant, feeling that you're superior, that you deserve more than
Yeah.
the others. But it's really more pride, as in pride in something that you appreciate and celebrate.
Mm. I think definitely in the modern context, yes. Of course, we do have to recognize that pride started off as a big fight because
Yes, yes.
we'd had enough of being sidelined, we'd had enough of being discriminated against, we'd had enough of the violence, we'd had enough of the sidelining. We had had enough. Mardi
Enough
Gras in
of
Australia,
being
um,
shamed. So it's
that's
like,
right.
so what's the opposite of shame? Well, it's pride. It's saying, I
Mm.
celebrate who I am. I celebrate, I show myself. I'm not going to hide myself anymore.
Yeah. So it was a big fight. So like Mardi Gras was like youths going down Oxford Street in Australia. There ended up being a riot. In Stonewall, there was a riot as well too. The wonderful drag queens got in there and they sorted the police out. Um, in New Zealand, there were riots around the homosexual law reform bill, which happened in the 80s. It was basically us just saying, "Oh, look, we've had enough.
Mm.
Just stop. We have the right to exist. We're not trying to force you not to exist. Stop doing that to us." Yeah. And then over time, what that's done is that's morphed into this celebration. And of course, we have a lot of supporters and allies and people who understand that, hey, everybody's just trying the best they can to live their life. And, we should really try and love and support each other. I know that sounds corny, but wouldn't it be a great world if we did that?
Yes,
If we learned how to do that?
yes.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's the aspect of Tantra as well, isn't it? Because really, and I do this practice on the tube sometimes, which I think arose really from some conversations we were having where it's just looking around and just appreciating the fact that this Shakti is flowing in everyone. And the
Yeah.
people I find attractive, well, of course, I get drawn to look at those people initially because
Mm.
there's a sense of attraction. But then I can just
Mm.
notice, well, that's just this sort of Shakti flowing and the life force energy, the sexual drive is, but then I can actually just look around and be like, wow, everyone here is just this flow of energy. And if people find Shakti too woo woo, it's like, well, we're all we're all born of stardust. Everyone around us contains the atoms of exploded suns from across the universe. And those suns, the ashes of those suns are now taking birth as these physical forms, moving
Mm.
through a world made up of other ashes of other suns. And so it's almost like Tantra is, I know there's a deep spiritual element to Tantra, which is about the interconnectedness of everything. And yet also it's almost pointing towards something that physics could suggest as well, that we're all interconnected, whether you're in a gay
Mm.
body, a straight body, a trans body, a Martian body. It's like we're all made of the same stardust, and the
Mm.
atoms in our body have moved through millions of other bodies and other entities, trees, animals, rocks, lava flowing down the volcano, And just for a little while, we're appearing here in this moment, and yet then people argue over whether this manifestation of uh, these atoms in the universe is appearing in the right way, as if, you know, there's a right way to be or a wrong way. You know, you're either straight or gay or this or that.
Mm. Yeah. I'm really glad that quantum physics is finally catching up, because Tantra is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. And basically, it has so many truths that quantum physics is finally catching up to. Like one of the things that Kashmir Shaivism said talks about is spanda, the divine vibration that creates, sustains, and dissolves everything. And
Mm,
it's actually the divine vibration, right? Of course, and another tradition, like in the yoga tradition, or I also find it funny when people think that like this sort of philosophy is very woo-woo, like, oh, because we're going to take our Western framework of science and we're going to, which is very young, and we're going to put it on these other scientific systems that have existed for thousands of years.
mm,
So often what I say to people when they come to my retreats, I say, don't believe what I say, experience it for yourself. Experience it for yourself directly, you know, and then make your decision. There's no need to blindly believe anything. In fact, to do that, I think is dangerous. And that's when it comes into like a misuse of power or power dynamic interplays, or all the stuff that we've seen, the problematic stuff that we've seen in modern spiritual movements and stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Buddha himself said that. There's in one of the scriptures, he says something like, don't just take what I say um, without questioning. You know, apply
Mm,
it in your life, question, and then learn from your own experience the truth of what I teach. And I think
beautiful.
that's the best way to really see, you know, is a teaching true? Because if someone's just saying, just believe me, I have the truth, and
Yeah.
give me some more money because I
Only
need
I
another
have the
Rolls
truth,
Royce.
by the way. Only I have the truth. No one else has the truth but me. It is such a burden to bear, and I'm so humble with it. Now, oh goodness me, what a whole play that is.
Yes.
Um, may I answer the question? You asked a really cool question before about how did I experience Tantra, or how do I experience it with myself and myself.
Mm.
Um, so originally, I was studying Kashmir Shaivism, which is traditional Tantra, and then I thought, okay, I'd like to experience the other aspects of Tantra too, as pertains to the sexual energy, how to work with that. So when I was in India, I had a couple of consorts. Consorts are people that you practice Tantra with. So I had one who was aligned with the masculine energy, the masculine polarity, and one who was aligned with the feminine polarity, with the goddess. And I would also work with, at times, and very disciplined, by the way, too. You've got to be very disciplined with this because it can be dangerous otherwise. At times, I worked with the five M's, Panchamakara, they're called. And they're the five forbidden substances. And you work with them on the left hand, on the Vama marker, the left hand part. But the whole idea of working with them is, can you maintain awareness? Can I stay centered in awareness without getting distracted? Can I go deeper into myself? Can I do that? If not, then the practice has been a failure, if you like. You've got to be able to enter the state of meditation. And well, Tantra basically says what's sacred and what's profane, what's holy and what's not. So working with the five M's, or for example, going to a cremation ground and sitting on the chest of a corpse and meditating and just looking down at them, the idea is to go, well, hold on a minute, there's nothing that isn't holy. Everything is consciousness. And also we might sort of look down at that corpse and go, well, I'm going there at some point. I'm going to go there too. So what am I doing with my life right now? How am I living my life right now? So yeah, that's what I did in Mumbai. And I deliberately did that. I wanted to experience that, that particular left hand practice and see what it held. I see what it could teach me. Because I wasn't there to muck around. I wasn't there to look all holy and oh, I'm going to waft down the street looking very spiritual. I don't know. I wanted to get to the nitty gritty. I wanted to
I'm
get
sure
to
you
the
did a
nitty
little bit
gritty.
of wafting.
Oh, I did quite a bit of wafting, and it was fabulous. Uh,
I
did
think
you
you
also
have
do?
spoken about how there was a period where you were sort of wafting, and then your
Oh,
teacher sort of gave you some instructions to sort of like
to stop
unwaft
wafting.
you.
Oh, yeah. And stopping wafting, I did. Okay. Because after that, goodness me, yeah. I think that sort of talks to the spiritual bypass, right? Where
Yes.
we want to be so holy, don't we, in the beginning, and everything has to be holy, and the rest of the world is profane, and we are sacred and holy and wafting,
Yes.
and then at some point we're like, oh, hold on a minute, there's absolutely no need to waft. I can just be myself, be my authentic self.
Well, although my monastery was from a very different tradition, and uh, but there was a sort of element of crazy wisdom to the Ajahn Chah lineage. And so when I arrived at the monastery, I'd had 8 years or so of meditating in a particular way, and it had been very much a sort of Apollonian path. I was trying to rise up out of my body to connect with some external enlightenment state, by relinquishing body, mind, um, meditating really, really quite hard and quite determinedly. Um, uh, and when I arrived at the monastery, and years later, when I went back to see the abbot after having left the monastery for a decade or so, and we were having a conversation, he said, "Yeah, you were such a space cadet when you arrived. I wasn't sure whether to actually accept you in or not, but he trusted." He trusted the person who was recommending me, who was a friend of his and a student of his. But um, so anyway, I arrived, and I thought, going to a monastery, it's going to be all about wafting into the shrine room, meditating, doing ethereal things. Um, and he told me, firstly, to stop meditating for long periods, to just join the community for their morning and evening sit, which were more at that point were about half an hour, because he had issues with his knees, so we tended to sit for about half an hour. And he said, apart from that, don't do any other meditation on your own. And he then it was in Northumberland, in the north of England, which is a very stony county. So the farmers in the past had used the stones and rocks to build the enclosures to the fields. So the monastery had all these old dry stone walls around it, which were collapsing and needing repair. There was a stonemason, a master stonemason, staying at the monastery, so he showed me how you build a dry stone wall. And for the next year or so, my work was just going out every day, rebuilding these walls. So that sense, and obviously it wasn't being taught as in connect with the Shakti or connect with just the bliss that is present in the moment. But in a way, that was the learning I got from it, because my monastery experience wasn't going and sitting and having profound insights as I delved into the minutiae of my meditation experience. It was standing in a field full of rocks, making a pile of them, and then slowly building this wall back up, being present in my body, present with my sensations, present with the pleasure there was actually in just the physicality and that sense of, you were saying, of Tantra, that Tantra reminds us that there is pleasure and bliss in everything. You know, not to create duality between there's my meditation experience and there's my life experience, or there's being with a lover and then there's doing something spiritual. There's building a dry stone wall and there's going and meditating in the temple. And instead, if enlightenment is actually about the dissolving of duality and simply being present to whatever this mysterious thusness is, of the aliveness of the universe appearing in this moment, then I definitely experienced such a sense of bliss and pleasure, letting go of having to be that spiritual seeker, actually, and letting go of having to do anything special. And it's just, I'm just here building a dry stone wall, and it feels good.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I'm here fully present in my body, embodied, doing what needs to be done in the moment.
Mm.
And I would say that is an absolute core teaching of Tantra. In Kashmir Shaivism, they call it Jivan Mukti, living liberation, being liberated while in the physical body.
Mm.
So when you're with a lover, be embodied. When you're in the garden, be embodied. When you're meditating, be in the body, settle. There will be a time, perhaps in meditation, when you're on the cushion, that you may transcend the body for some period of time. But then when you come back from that place, settle back into the body before moving back out into the world, so that you're not spaced out, so that you feel grounded, so that you feel present in the moment. You know? That to me is a really key point that I work with in my practice over and over again. Am I embodied? Am I present? Where am I? I remember once my teacher, she gave a teaching with a light switch. She went over to the light switch and she said, all you people you want, I'm paraphrasing, but basically she said, all you people, you want philosophical discourse, but you can't even do this. And she went up and she switched the light switch on and she looked at it with full presence, and then she switched the light switch off. And so I worked with that for weeks afterwards. And I would ask myself when I go up to that light switch, am I present right now? Am I aware right now? Where am I right now? Am I in my body right now? So yeah, Nick, I think you've really touched on a very important point in Tantra, you know, an important teaching. If we're not embodied in practice, then we need to be, because otherwise it all just kind of flies away, just flies away into the ether.
Yes. And funnily enough, I was working with two men who were partners, lovers. One of them had worked with me previously in a one-to-one session, and he then contacted me about doing something, a bespoke session for he and his lover, with myself included within the mix as the practitioner participant. And so, and it was so interesting working with two people who were already lovers. And so there's a certain autopilot within their dynamic. So we were focusing on this slowing down, on a slow undressing, taking turns to undress each other. And then as we got undressed, then then as we were standing together, there started to be some kissing, caressing, and obviously as they were lovers, they very easily went into more of that flame burning quite quickly. And so I just sort of I allowed that for a few minutes so that they could really just feel this sense of connection and pleasure and joy. And then it was like, okay, and now let's just slow this down again, ground it in a sense, so that it's not just suddenly 20 minutes into what became a 3-hour session, but we're 20 minutes in, it's suddenly going into that autopilot of male and male fire energy meeting, and it all gets very fiery and fuckery very quickly and sort of like
Yeah, true.
so again, that's what the type of point we touched on earlier about slowing down, but also staying embodied. So you're enjoying what I was wanting to really encourage them to experience was how they could really enjoy the connection that they had, but then to explore what's it like when they then actually just step back again for a moment, come back into their bodies rather than being suddenly in this intermingled, fiery, explosive, beautiful connection, but then for a moment just coming back to like, and how does this feel? How does this feel to just feel that Shakti flowing? And by the end, the one of the partners, the one who was new and had never done Tantra before, he'd started by saying he felt really anxious and very uncertain about the experience, but was trusting his partner and was going ahead with it. Um, and by the end, both of them were commenting on that classic Tantra experience of feeling energized and yet deeply relaxed, deeply present, and yet full of this sense of vitality and aliveness, rather than this sense of the fire having burnt bright and exploded and then being a bit like afterwards being a bit like spent and sort of needing some time to recover.
Yeah. What I hear from that is a sustained awareness of the Shakti. So it's like often people will ask me about ejaculation and orgasm, or what's the relationship between the two. And I'll say, well, ejaculation, if you over ejaculate, you'll know very quickly because you'll feel tired, or you'll feel maybe a bit depressed, or you'll feel demotivated, or you'll feel spent, is a good word. If you haven't over ejaculated, then you'll feel energized, you'll feel quite light, you'll feel in your body, you'll feel pretty good. Conversely, if you decide to cultivate and you don't ejaculate semen at all, you can. I remember someone was sharing this with me the other day. I work with a lovely couple in New York. They're amazing people. And one of them shared that they'd been intimate and he hadn't ejaculated. And then he said for hours afterwards, he was in like an ecstatic state. He was feeling light and buoyant and ecstatic and fantastic. And so we discussed what that was about. And I said, in Tantra, that would be called samavesha. That would be like samadhi, if you like, in yoga. It's like you're not spending the energy through ejaculation. You're keeping it within you. And then, of course, as a result, your energy builds. Your energy builds into an ecstatic state, what Tantra would call ananda, bliss, a blissful state. And he said he was in it for hours. And I said to him, well, I totally agree with you, because that's been my experience also. So it's not necessarily when you cultivate that you're trying to punish yourself, or I'm going to be ascetic, I'm not going to ejaculate. It's not like that. It's like foregoing the instant gratification for the slow burn, if you like, rather than that incendiary thing you were talking about, with the energy. Rather a slow burn of bliss.
Yes, beautiful. Yes. And then just being able to rest in that
Mm.
sense of bliss and pleasure and
Mm.
um and that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I mean, my Buddhist name was Bodhinandu, so Bodhi and Nanda, um so the bliss of awakening.
Mm.
um so, and the Buddha says that enlightenment alone is bliss. So
Mm.
Tantra is, in a way, pointing us towards what our true nature is. And our true nature, I mean, this body is a little bubble floating through space that lasts for a few seconds. So it's not that we can go for refuge to this body, because this body at best will last 100 years or so.
Mm.
But at the same time, our body isn't something to, from a Tantra perspective, and from what you say, it's like, it's not that we then ascetically reject our body and purge and purify our body. The only
Mm.
purification we need in our body is opening the channels and allowing Shakti to flow, so that we experience our body as a blissful part of the whole. And of course, we have
That
to also let go of
integral.
our body, because it will dissolve at some point. So, and then, like you say, sometimes in meditation, you may experience that which is not the body.
Mm. Well, in fact, I think that's the whole point of Tantra, to experience that which is deeper than the physical body and let that permeate the entire physical body also. So one of the objectives of traditional Tantra is that experience of ecstasy, to live in that, to learn how to hold more and more and more of that Shakti, whether that be through meditation, whether that be through scriptural study, whether that be through insight, whether that be through, if you want to work with sexual teachings. Now, an interesting thing too with traditional Tantra is you might hear some scholars say, oh, well, there's actually very little sexual teachings in these particular Tantras, but that's because they were kept secret. And so they may be there, they may not even be written down.
Mm.
They may not even be written down in the scriptures because they're kept secret. And as you and I know, Tantra was initially an oral tradition, and it
Mm.
was designed that way to to protect the teachings as well too, because experiencing that power can be beautiful. That Shakti, it can also be downright terrifying if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
This is the energy that's created the entire universe.
Yes.
So for us to kind of skip around and go, I am going to master the Shakti, oh, that's a little bit silly. Because how are we going to master the energy which has created the whole
Yes.
universe?
Well,
I
the
think it's
energy will
better to
master us, won't
cooperate
it?
with it.
So,
Yeah, I think a better attitude is for us to go, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to cooperate with it.
mm.
I will master the Shakti. Oh, okay, very nice. Good luck with that.
I am going to master the absolute life
Yeah,
force of the universe and
yeah.
sort of make it mine.
Instead of Nick and Grant being the masters of the universe, like that new movie, we can be the masters of the life force of the universe. Oh, that sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Oh.
It reminds me, one of my mentors in the monastery, the reason he became a monk was because he was doing a lot of yoga and a lot of
Mm,
headstands.
mm,
And as part of his yoga practice. And then he had a movement of Shakti one time whilst he was doing a headstand that literally blew his brains out. He found it really, really hard to then ground and come back again, because I think his sense of identity did just disintegrate, but not in a, it was an insight, it was an awakening, but it was forced, and there wasn't the container of awareness to then be able to let it weave its magic, and instead there was just this sense of collapse. And so he became a monk so that he could just sit with this sense of like, I don't know what the fuck's happened to me, but I sort of like, I can't even operate in the world now. I need to just, and slowly he reconfigured and then was able to live from this experience. But it took him some time to integrate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I totally hear that. And it sounds to me like he spent his time in the monastery learning how to assimilate that massive reorientation of one's identity. You
Yes.
know, like a shattering of one's identity, if you like. Like, oh my God, I'm not who I thought I was. Yeah. I'm so much larger than that, or
Mm.
smaller than that, maybe.
Yeah.
Or I'm unlimited,
Yes.
to live from that place. But
Yeah.
bringing it back also to your beautiful, like, opening about pride as well too. Uh, Often when I teach retreats, like I teach retreats for LGBTQ community, right? I love it. And also, there's a lot of life issues to navigate, right? There's shame, there's bullying, there's trauma, disposability, loneliness, fear of aging, competition, substance use and abuse, cheating, superficial app-based connection, all these things. But recently I was thinking about all of that, you know, thinking about the upcoming retreat. And I also thought, hold on a minute. That's also that's true for everybody as well. So maybe it's time for people who aren't necessarily in the rainbow community, maybe it might be time for them to ask us, what's it like to navigate those things from your perspective? What could we learn from you? What could you share with us through your life's wisdom,
Mm.
rather than sidelining us or putting us to the side? I mean, in the past, Nick, we were the shamans, we were the mystics, we were the people who were really easily aligned with our masculine and feminine energies. We were powerful and we were dangerous because they didn't quite know how to deal with us. So often we stayed and
Mm.
lived outside the village, and then people would come to see us.
Yes. But like the
Maybe it
hijras
might be time to
in
reclaim that a bit.
yes, and I mean that we still have that tradition in the
Yeah,
hijras in India, and I mean you probably
yeah,
saw that when you were living in India, and
yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah. They used to go down the train. There was one particular day I was on the train to Mumbai, and this hijra came down, and she was clapping and doing her beautiful blessings for people and receiving some rupees, you know, to help her live. And so I had some rupees ready for her. Quite a decent amount of rupees, I might add, because I thought, I'm going to feed you, girlfriend. You know, this is your, uh, you know, your meal for the next week. So anyway, I gave her the rupees. She looked at me with disdain and started to walk away. So I went, "Hey, mere Ashirwad kidder hey," which means, "Hey, where's my blessing?" She came back. She looked at me. She gave me the blessing. And I looked at her and I said, Dhanyavad, thank you. And I looked right in. I
mm,
was like, can you see that I'm seeing you?
mm,
Can you see that I'm seeing you? Because I've lived a life similar to you.
mm, mm.
It's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, very powerful. And for people
Mm.
who don't know or might be wondering, what hijras? Is that so? How would you describe it? As people who are born in a male body but
Mm.
choose to dress and present as in a female form, but they're
Yeah,
integrating that masculine and feminine. I don't think they have any form of surgery, do they? So they continue to be in a male body, but they dress and
yeah, that's
present
my
as a
understanding.
female.
Yeah, it's like how in India there's Ardhanarishwar. So there's a form of Shiva that is half feminine, half masculine, half Shiva, half Shakti. And the same way, um, the hijras are like that, right? They embody both the feminine and the masculine energies in one body. And because
Mm.
they do that, they're incredibly powerful. Right? And so when you go to a wedding, it's very auspicious to have a hijra there because they're representing both the male energy and the female energy.
So in a way, that's a lovely point to come to as we come to a close, and we're talking about pride, and we're looking at very much maybe from a Western perspective, and pride marches and parades and riots and claiming our rights, and then to step out of that sort of Eurocentric perspective, Western perspective for a moment, we can remember that actually, hijras have been there in India for at least the last couple of thousand years, being respected, being valued. Probably post-British imperial rule, their position in society was more challenged
Mm.
because of sort of British policies and incorporating British law into Indian law, but they're still there, and
Yeah, that's true there.
um, and if anything, I mean, India, a lot of the post-colonial countries, they took in these anti uh, gay perspectives, the sort of homophobia that was sort of brought from Britain to the colonies. When many of
Mm.
the, I mean, this is a whole separate thing we can explore in another conversation, but many of the countries around the world where the British arrived, sex between same sexes was an accepted part of those local communities. And then the British
Absolutely.
imposed their moral perspective onto these communities. But even that, for 100 years, yeah, India was under that cloud. And
Mm.
yet now the law's changed, and the hijras
Mm.
have ridden it out, and they're still
Mhm,
there,
mhm.
walking up and down the
Yeah,
trains, being given
yeah,
money, going to weddings, giving blessings,
yeah. As are we.
as are we.
We have endured. We have endured. One thing that I think about in my own life is how can I express pride in my own life? And I guess for me, it's just being who I am, unapologetically, authentically, just being who I am.
Mm. Beautiful, and that's a lovely place for us to finish. Pride, simply being who I am, and who I am is Shakti. Um,
Mm.
and
And
how
maybe a bit
just
of
sorry,
a bit of Shiva, and maybe a bit of Shiva, maybe a bit of Shakti.
a little bit
Oh,
of
a bit of
Shakti, a little
both.
bit of Shiva,
Oh, and
Shakti
then, oh, yeah.
Shiva. But essentially, that is the spiritual path, isn't it? It's the
Mm,
coming full circle. It's starting as an ego, going through the process of letting go and seeing through, and asceticism and relinquishing ego, and then it's sort of coming back full circle, which is sort of Tantra is pointing to, where it's like, well, you here in the world, you are just this expression of life living itself. So how do you live it most freely, rather than living from a place of shame or restriction or narrowness, in a way that doesn't harm others? So because we respect the Shakti and the life vitality of others,
mm,
um, but that is also not apologizing and
that's
holding
right.
yourself small because you don't want to cause others offense at sort of your own magnificence. Sort of like, because
Yeah,
everyone's magnificent, everyone is the universe
absolutely.
playing at
Yeah,
being itself.
yeah. Absolutely. And I would say that's the key, right? Understanding our own magnificence and also seeing the magnificence of others as well,
Mm,
and learning to live from that place.
mm,
And to do that is, it's pretty badass to
mm.
get to that place, to be able to do that.
Yes,
But that I would say, if we can get to that place, then that would be the essence of pride.
yes, yes. And that is what you see, isn't it? I mean, when you see there's something so liberating, say like last year on the Pride parade, my flatmate Pinto, he'd made a whole Brazilian carnival costume, um, so that when he was marching with the Stonewall group, he was in his carnival costume dancing as he went through the parade, and it made me realize that actually in some ways our Pride March in London doesn't sort of feels like a walk rather than a celebration, because um, other cultures maybe are a little bit more connected to that sense of like, oh, so like the Brazilian carnival culture.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but when I'm watching the Pride March in London, when there's a particular group going past where there may be drumming or there's people dancing, and you start to feel that energy of like, yes, people just being fabulous within themselves, but inviting others to connect with our own fabulousness. And like you were
mm,
saying, so that's that aspect of pride, that you're
mm,
showing your magnificence, but it's not to overshadow anyone else's magnificence. It's because everyone is Shiva, everyone is Brahma, or whatever your perspective, everyone has Buddha nature, um, and everyone is magnificent. So,
mm.
uh, and then it's not just the LGBTQ community, but it's like actually, if we can be the shamans or the seers that sort of help people see between worlds, then it's allowing everyone to know, this is what you are in your deepest nature. Um, our fear is that we only have this husk for 50, 60, 80, 100 years. And so, of course, there's a huge fear in that, isn't there?
Mm,
Because we feel how vulnerable this little envelope of skin and flesh and atoms is. Um, but then if we connect with, well, actually, but what's actually informing, what makes this hard earth pliable and alive and vital, and gives whatever this weird spark of energy is that gives rise to consciousness and knowledge. Um, well, that's something we all share, and also from a spiritual perspective, that's eternal. It's outside of time and space, and so it's not something that can ever die. And that, for me, I mean, that's what I've always felt this life is about, is how I actually truly wake up to that, and that waking up to it is bliss. Is a state of recognizing that blissful nature of the universe,
mm,
appearing in time and space like
mm,
this.
mm.
What a wonderful
I
thing to
mean,
have pride in.
what was that?
And what a wonderful thing to give rise to pride, when if everyone were to come from that place of knowing that they are this sort of eternal bliss.
Wow, I mean, the eternal bliss, that is the characteristic of the Shakti. Yeah? That is the characteristic of the Shakti. Eternal bliss. Eternal bliss.
So wishing everyone eternal bliss, for those who are celebrating pride in any way, and for those who aren't.
Yay! For everyone.
For everyone, celebrating bliss. So thank you, Grant. A really, really lovely conversation as always.
Thank
And
you, Nick. Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing these things. And for everyone listening, I hope that whether you're part of the LGBTQ plus community or not, I hope there's something there where you just get reminded to connect with, what is your bliss, and that bliss can be as simple as turning a light switch on or off when you are fully present in the experience of the amazingness of this moment. So be well, everyone. And I look forward to sharing some more conversations with Grant another time. And for now, goodbye. Be well. And Grant, if you'd like to say any closing words.
Bye-bye. Live your bliss. Remember that you're the Shakti. See you next time.
See you next time, everyone. Bye for now.